Hi, welcome back. We are still in week one, and this is the second part of our lecture on communication development. If you remember from the previous video, we talked about the differences between speech and language and communication. We also discussed Broca's area and what language looks like for a client with Broca's aphasia. And we talked about Wernicke's area and what language looks like for a patient with Wernicke's aphasia. And then we talked about the unique role of the arcuate fasciculus in the ability for humans to develop and use language. So, just as a recap, definition of language: any code employing signs, symbols, or gestures used for communicating ideas meaningfully between human beings. Right? Communication is the ability to exchange ideas or information, and language is the symbol set that we use to get that done. Language is a social tool. We use it to communicate meanings, feelings, and intentions. We use language to express ourselves and interact with others. Language is comprised of two sets of skills: receptive and expressive. Receptive language means your understanding of language, what you understand. Expressive language means the language that you can produce in both written and oral form. Receptive and expressive, right? And receptive comes along first. You can understand more than you can say in both your, native language and any secondary languages that you learn. You notice this if you've ever gone on a trip to a country where English is not the language of the country, right? You can understand more than you can produce in that other language. And then expressive language comes along a little later, and that's your production. So, for our forum, I would like to think about what it takes to create a language. So I want you to imagine that the entire Earth has decided that we're going to make one language altogether. Enough of learning, 140 languages. We are going to make one language to be used by all people. And this has been tried, so it hasn't worked, as you can tell. But let's say you're tasked with heading up the committee to develop this new language. I want you to pause this here and give it a minute and think about what components you think you'd need to include in order to create this new language for everybody on the planet. What do you think needs to be included in that language? So pause here, think about that, and I'll join back up with you in a second. Actually, I'm really going to go ahead, but you pause, and I'll meet you on the next slide. Okay, so if you really thought about it, you might have come up with something close to this. These are the Fab Five components of language, right? You're going to know these like the back of your hand: phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. And we're going to go through each of the five in detail so you have this. Okay. Phonology. Phonology is the study and use of individual sound units in a language and the rules by which they are combined and recombined to create larger language units, right? Phonemes are the units of sound. S, b, k, g. Each one of those is a phoneme, right? In the English language, we have 26 letters, but if you've taken our Czech, we have 40 different phonemes. So, phonemes are units of sound. Phonemes alter the meanings of words when they're combined, right? So, at with s in front of it is sat, but at with but in front of it is bat, right? This changes the meaning of that word. Phonology, it's the sound units of a language. What does a deficit in phonology look like, right? And so any of you that have been in speech therapy when you were younger, or you've observed sessions, you've probably seen, articulation therapy. Phonology is what they're working on, right? Phonological deficits appear frequently as our tic disorders. So maybe a child omits a consonant, and they say ooh instead of saying you, right? Or maybe the client you're watching substitutes one consonant for another, right? They're gliding wabbit for rabbit. They're substituting the W for the R sound. And then discrimination A child might hear "go get the nail" instead of "go get the mail." One of my favorite clients, Anthony, when I was first starting with him, showed up in my office and was really excited. And then after that, you saw him become quickly disappointed when he asked me, "Where's the sand, Miss Michelle?" And I said, "What is that, Anthony? Where is the sand? Where are the shells?" And I said, "What do you mean? Tell me why you think there's sand and shells." And he said, "Well, I was going to the beach office." So Anthony was totally edible, heard that he was going to the beach office, when in fact he was going to the speech office. So he was in the right place. But I will always remember how disappointed he was when he got there and just saw boxes of fishing games and that kind of thing. So even deficits in discrimination are phonological deficits. Okay, so moving on. Morphology. This is a little bit harder to understand, and we'll be focusing on this throughout the semester. But morphology is the study and use of phonemes. Now, these are the smallest units of language that have meaning, right? And these are very important when you're looking at typical or disordered development for young children, particularly those with a language level at about 4 years or under, right? How they use morphemes is very important to know in figuring out if they're on track for expected language development. So a morpheme is a group of sounds that refers to a particular object, idea, or action. So the roots can stand alone. So things like, single words, car, teach, tall, each one of these are morphemes, right? Then you have things like affixes, which are bound, such as prefixes and suffixes, which when attached to the roots can change the meaning of words, right? So the most common one is the plural s, right? So car is one morpheme, but cars, plural, is now two morphemes, because you have the root car plus the plural s morpheme. So two morphemes. When you have a child who can say the word cars, they are using two morphemes in that one word. That's an important marker of language development. So what is a deficit in morphology? What does that look and sound like? When kids are, school age, elementary age, they may not use appropriate inflectional endings in their speech. So you'll hear things like he walk or mommy coat, right? So they're not using the correct form, he walks, of the verb walk, or the possessive form of mommy, mommy's coat. So those may be missing. When kids get older, middle school age, they may start to lack irregular past tense or irregular plurals, right? Those are later developing, but for kids with morphological deficits, you'll see, even though they've hit age expectations for using these, they're not, right? And so you might hear things like drived for drove, and things like mans for men, right? So they're not able to use the irregular past or plural tenses. Okay, so we've talked about phonology quickly, morphology. Now we're up to semantics. That's the third piece of language, right? Semantics refers to the larger meaning component of language. Semantics basically just means vocabulary, right? More than single words, this includes complex use of vocabulary, including structures such as word categories, right? Word relationships, and things like synonyms, antonyms, figurative language, ambiguities, and absurdities. These all relate to how your client understands the meaning of words. Semantics. Okay. What is a semantic deficit then? Semantic deficits can show up in limited vocabulary, especially use of adjectives, prepositions, or pronouns, right? Those are very common things to work on for your children with language deficits. You're also going to see that some of your clients have a longer response time in selecting their vocabulary words, right? So they're having a hard time retrieving the word because of the way it's stored in their brain, right? They may fail to perceive subtle changes in word meaning, so they can have incomplete understanding and misinterpretations, right? And when you think about what that means for a middle schooler and his peer group, you can see the impact of semantic deficits on social interaction for your clients, right? deficits in language have cascading impact on deficits across school success and social success. So you're studying for an important job that will impact much more than just your client's language use, right? Because communication is the way we interact with each other. So getting stronger at that will create a better school experience and social experience for each of your clients. And then finally, semantic deficits can be things like figurative language problems. Oh, I'm so hungry I could eat a horse, right? Your kids who are having deficits in semantics may not be able to figure that out. So, let's get to syntax. Syntax is the study of the rules by which the words are organized into phrases or sentences in a particular language, right? So now this is the structure of language. Ooh, everybody loves syntax, right? You may remember this from junior high, right? And declining sentences and diagramming sentences, right? These are grammar. These are the rules. We all agree on these rules in order to make the language work and be understandable. So what does a deficit in syntax look like? This you probably know, right? So your clients may lack the length or syntactic complexity of, what would be expected of their age, right? So they, instead of seeing where did daddy go, they may just shorten it down to where daddy go, right? It's a more syntactically immature combination. Also, your clients can have problems comprehending sentences that express relationships between direct or indirect objects, right? Or they can have difficulty with WH questions, both in understanding them and formatting them. So, finally, this is the fifth part of language, pragmatics, and pragmatics is super fun. So we will talk about that in the last week of the class, but pragmatics is the knowledge and ability to use language functionally in social or interactive situations. Pragmatics is neat because it integrates all the other language skills, but also requires knowledge and use of the rules governing language in a social context. Pragmatics is how you use language to get through your day. If you think about getting up this morning and you go through your day, think about all the ways you've used language to get to where you are so that you can sit and watch and understand this video today, right? You may have woken up and greeted your roommate or not. That's pragmatics, right? You may have gone to Dunkin' Donuts and ordered a Dunkachino, right? And that's a request, right? They may have given you a latte, and so you have to use your language again to repair that. That's a breakdown. You use your language again to repair the breakdown. No, please, a Dunkachino, right? So you get the right drink and you feel normal again, right? You may have checked in with your friend through a text, or emailed a professor, or called your parents. These are all the ways that you use the language that you have to function and communicate throughout your day. That's pragmatics. Okay, what is a pragmatic deficit? So problems that you might see for clients with pragmatics issues are difficulties understanding indirect requests. So when you rephrase things, so women do this a lot more than men, but you may phrase something in a kind of an indirect way, and we do that really in order to be polite, right? So must you play the piano? When we're saying that in an indirect way, what we really mean is stop, right? This is driving me nuts, right? But your clients with pragmatic deficits may not understand that you are meaning stop playing this when you say, must you play the piano? They don't get the indirect requests, right? Until it's explained to them. Also, they may enter conversations in a socially unacceptable fashion, right? We've all had experience talking to a friend and someone else bursts in, right? When your clients do that and their children, they're not the most popular kids in their social group, right? They're not following the rules of easy entry, and they may fail to take turns talking, and they can have difficulty staying on topic. So those are all examples of pragmatic deficits. So again, language components and skills include the Fab Five, and here's where they fit in, right? phonology, morphology, and syntax fall under what we call the form of language, right? This is the structure of a language, the sound structure, the morpheme meaning structure, and the grammar rules, right? Then we have content. And this only includes one category, semantics. When we say content, we say semantics, we mean meaning or vocabulary. And then finally we have use, which is pragmatics, the way we use language to express ourselves and interact with others. Right? And here's a little diagram from Lois Bloom, but she combined. She talked about how language is like three pieces of a pie. Form, content, and use all work together in order for you to create meaning and share meaning. Okay, thank you.